important outlet for these great thinkers.
The Progressive Radio Network, PRN.FM.
Ellen Camline, the Natural Nurse, and as always, I'm wishing you the best. So we love to have you join us right here on The Natural Nurse and Dr. Z, and the best way to find us is by going to naturalnurse.com. At naturalnurse.com, you will be able to see all the things that we do. For instance, we have a lot of radio shows there that you can listen to and podcasts. And of course, there are archives of this show. All the shows on Progressive Radio Network are available to you as archives, which is really wonderful because that means you can listen anytime, day or night. And people do. We actually have documentation of over 300,000 of you participating with us by listening to the podcast, which is excellent. That's certainly a very, very good way to join in. But if you go to naturalnurse.com, you can join our mailing list just by putting your email in. No other information is required. Just go to naturalnurse.com, go to the bottom left-hand corner of the front of the site, and you'll see add your name for emails, and that's all you have to do. No name, just your email. But you can also check the site at any time, naturalnurse.com calendar. If you go to the calendar, you'll see all of our upcoming events. And coming up right now is a lecture on Hildegard of Bingen, mystic, psychic, visionary herbalist. She was an absolutely fascinating person, Hildegard. And she lived from 1098 to 1179. So she lived, very old, especially in those days. And she was a Benedictine nun who was considered also to be the founder of scientific natural history in Germany. This is a woman. She was totally a very, very powerful woman who lived in those years and was also a nun. And of course, what she was a major herbalist. And she developed an entire system of natural therapies using food, gemstones, and medicinal herbs. And I will do a radio show about her. In fact, we had a guest on already who did focus on her. I could send you that link if you ask me to. But we have a lecture about her, and that's a live on-ground lecture coming up this week. So you can actually attend. That's in Florida. Or you can ask, just email for the radio show about her, and I'll send you that. Really fascinating. Then we also have this week a free webinar called Hemp, THC, CBD, cannabis, endocannabinoids. What's all the buzz? And this is free and open to everyone, and it grants 2 CE units for registered dietitians. And you can find out all about what is the difference between things that say CBD oil and hemp full spectrum flower oil versus hemp oil, which is made from hemp seeds. It's a very big topic, it's a very confusing topic, and it is all the buzz. And you can participate for free online by just going to naturalnurse.com calendar and sign up for that. We also have, this is all just this week, career paths in natural health. How would you like to have your daily work centered around health and wellness or herbs and nutrition? Well, you don't have to become a registered dietitian or a natural nurse, although that is a path. You don't have to become a naturopathic physician. You can start wherever you are now. For instance, let's say you do sales. Well, you could join the huge nutraceutical industry and instead be involved with sales of vitamins, minerals, herbs, which is the same in terms of the amount of income you're going to make, but the daily language and what you have to learn to be effective now is surrounding natural products industry, and by natural health and by herbs and supplements. It becomes your language. It becomes what you're immersed in for the day, and you might find work much more satisfying. Or if you're a graphic design artist, maybe you would enjoy actually creating advertisements and being immersed in learning more about nutrition so you could do an effective and legal ad. You might even evolve to be part of the regulatory team. There's no end of what you can do no matter who you are and where you're at. And if you are already a nutritionist or an RD or a nurse or an NP, which is a nurse practitioner, all of this, and licensed massage therapists and midwives, you all get 3 CEUs for taking my class, Career Paths in Natural Health. Career Counseling with the Natural Nurse. And you can immediately sign up for that right now. It's coming up soon. And if you can't make it at that time, you can sign up, and then I send you the archive immediately. So that's a really, really good thing to look into if you feel like you need more satisfaction out of your work life, or you'd like more of your work life to be surrounded by a natural veneer. Also, we have an herb walk coming up, Explore Edible and Medicinal Wild Plants of South Florida. That's coming right up. And then, of course, we have tons of classes about that in the Long Island area. We also have the Natural Nurse Herbal Certification class, which is starting very, very soon. And that grants 18 CEUs for professionals, but is open to anyone. And it's part of a class that you can take towards becoming an RH. An RH is a registered herbalist. So you can start, if you'd like, with the Natural Nurse Herbal Certification course, but you can take it for any reason. It will give you basic information on how to use herbs, first of all, for yourself and your family, and then go more deeply into creating protocols for others. And it's a fully certified class and open to anyone. And if you're thinking about learning herbal medicine, it's a great, great place to start. And extremely cost effective. I know courses like this that cost in the thousands, and this is like, a teeny little price for the class. So you can go online at Natural Nurse Herbal Certification and sign up for the course. Just go to naturalnurse.com calendar, scroll down, and you'll see that that's starting soon, the full course, which is 4 classes. So sort of no end, and by the way, this is ongoing. So anytime you want, you can go to naturalnurse.com and look at calendar, and you will be able to find all this information. Well, we're so happy to have on board as our guest today a wonderful guest, and his name is Cam, just like my last name is Cami, but that's his first name, and his name is Cam Knight, and he is a mental performance coach and author, and we'll be talking about what that means. He's written many, many books. His website is called mindlily.com, and we'll talk about what that might mean to him in a little while. And he has written several best-selling books in the area of mental performance, such as memory, concentration, and productivity. Growing up, Cam had a lot of difficulties with focus, sitting still, and keeping his mind on thoughts and his thoughts in his mind. And he overcame these difficulties through various techniques that he now likes to share with others to support their success. And you can find out more at mindlily.com. So thank you so much for coming on board and being our guest today, Cam.
Hi, Ellen. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, I see you made it on. So I'm glad, because I'm looking right here at your website and about all your books. Now, let's go back in time, because I know that the path that you're on now actually started for you all the way back in childhood. So why don't you share with us, going back in time, how this path came about?
Okay, sure. So as far back as I can remember, I've had an unquiet mind. In addition to the hyperactive thoughts, I had extreme difficulty learning, paying attention, sitting still, organizing my ideas, communicating, interacting. Anything that involved the mind, I had tremendous challenges around. Now, when people hear this, they immediately think attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, though I would be lucky if it were only ADHD. Unfortunately, it was
Well,
much more severe than,
wait a minute. Were you
yeah.
actually diagnosed with ADHD, or are you just thinking it was a similar situation?
No, I wasn't diagnosed, but when I give the introduction that I have to people, they usually assume that it's ADHD.
Yeah, it
And
sounds like that, certainly.
yeah, but as I was saying, it was much more severe than that because my emotions were raging and cycling really intensely. Some days I was lethargic with no motivation and barely able to get out of bed, and other days hyper and out of control. Some days I was happy and wanted to hug the world, and other days raging with anger. And now when people hear this, they think bipolar, and I wish it was that simple too. Like I was literally changing states constantly. The best way to really describe my state was that I felt like I was going to spontaneously combust, but the tragedy of it was that I never did. So if you can imagine what that would feel like on a day-to-day basis, that's kind of what it was like.
So now, were your parents aware that you were having this kind of struggle?
No, I mean, I never really communicated it because I didn't realize what I was going through was really different or anything like that. But at the same time, you know, I come from a third world country and a poor part of a third world country where these kinds of things aren't really at the forefront of our awareness. We just assume that if you're hyper and out of control, then you just don't have self-control. And that's kind of the assumptions that was made by people around me, and that's kind of the beliefs that I picked up.
So basically, your parents just, I wouldn't say ignored it, but were you doing okay in school, so they were able to kind of just not worry about it too much?
No, I wouldn't say I was doing the best in school. I was like even in second grade, my parents had my teachers had brought in my parents telling them that I may need to be held back a grade. Luckily, that didn't happen, but I don't think there was much of an awareness that, you know, there was a lot of intensity inside of me. And I didn't realize that my intensity was abnormal. So it wasn't something I really communicated to them. And a lot of times, you know, when you're young, a bit of hyperactivity is almost expected. And the expectation is that when you grow up, you'll grow out of it. But unfortunately for me, I didn't grow out of it. It just got worse and worse. And then when I graduated college, you know, it was really kind of at the forefront for me because it really affected all areas of my life, personal, professional, as well as my academic life.
So when did you begin on sort of a more in-depth, both intellectual and on-ground learning curve to sort of recognize, wow, there is something here and maybe there's something I can do about it?
Yeah, so I don't know where it started specifically. I think it was more of a long-term thing where little by little I started to notice that, you know, the way I was acting and the way I was reacting was very different from other people. When I got out of college, I would notice that, you know, a lot of people, they just seem to be a lot more calm and things weren't as difficult for them. You know, if they got a new assignment at work, or if there was something that they had to do, they didn't get this like jolt of emotional fear or all sorts of other intense emotions that I would have to manage, but they didn't. And so for a long time, I assumed that they just had more self-control than me. I thought that I had weak will or no willpower, or more or less that I had a mistaken belief that there was something wrong with me. And I carried that belief for a long time, that there was something I was doing or not doing. But then I started to realize over time that it wasn't there was something more serious. It wasn't just about me not having will or self-control, but something more going on. And it kind of, the realization happened not in like one moment, but just over time.
Okay, and then did you make a commitment to yourself about finding out more about this and seeing if you can get a handle on it?
Yeah, so very early on, it was pretty much after I graduated college, I had decided that I was going to do anything and everything. Whatever advice, systems, processes, medicines came my way, I would give it a shot. And at a certain point in my life, I had the opportunity to travel. And in my travels, I was just really, it wasn't a journey of exploration and fun, it was really a journey of healing. And I just kind of went where my mind took me, and whatever things came up that might be effective or could heal me, I would give it a shot. So yeah, I've been on a journey for over 15 years trying to kind of handle this mayhem.
Now, one thing that you share, and you do write about it on your website, and many people have read books that I've written, including The Natural Medicine Chest, where my co-host, Dr. Z, Eugene Zamperone, and myself have studied, both of us, for many, many years, and have written about our experiences with span over 50 years of studying with shamanic healers and indigenous healers in remote areas all over the world. And that has led to our own depth of knowledge as well as personal healing. And I see that you did visit with shamanic healers in the Amazon, and also looking at Africa, visiting ashrams in Asia, and had some experiences which led you to a really deep understanding. Why don't you share those with, or at least what you'd like, with us about that?
Okay. Yeah, so it was a long journey, so there's a lot to share. So I'll take snippets out of it. So when I was traveling, I had, when I was in the States, things were getting really challenging for me. So I decided that I needed to take a break. And I decided that I would travel for a few months, and, a few months turned into much longer than that, several years. But when I was traveling, I didn't really have a plan. I was just kind of going with the wind. And as I mentioned, if something came up that could seem useful or helpful, I tried it. So when I was in Guatemala, I was in a particular area called Lake Atitlan. And in this lake, there was a small town where they did a lot of spiritual work. So you could do hypnosis and all sorts of other things. There were cacao ceremonies. So when I was out there, I was just trying whatever was coming my way. And then when I was in Bolivia, I had heard about this witches market, and you can get find all sorts of things that you normally wouldn't outside of that market. And, I had heard about different like tinctures and stuff like that, so I tried that. But a very interesting experience happened when I was in Colombia. I had a friend who owned a farm, and she would bring people from around the world to teach them horticulture. And one group that she brought over, they wanted, after they ended the program, they're like, hey, we want to end by trying, ayahuasca, which is a psychedelic medicinal plant that comes from the Amazon region. And so she knew a shaman, and she set up a ceremony, and I happened to visit her that day. And I had never heard about ayahuasca, but I had the opportunity to meet the shaman. And it was a really interesting experience because, he had been doing this plant medicine since he was 3, because it's part of their culture. In that region, and people who do the ayahuasca, they don't go to church or mosque. Their spirituality is that plant medicine. And so he'd been doing it since he was very young. And when I spoke to him, I noticed just like how calm and peaceful and centered he was. And it was quite amazing, because I know people who've done other kinds of drugs. And what I noticed is if they did it too much, it showed in their behavior and their mannerisms. There was weird
Okay,
twitches
so I
and
just
all
want to
that.
throw in here. So you're talking about an ayahuasca experience and that you
Yeah.
had it under the auspices of a shamanic or indigenous healer who was used to running these kinds of ceremonies.
Yes, exactly. And he had been doing it since he was 3 years old. And and realizing that he'd been doing it at such a young age and how calm and centered he was, I was like really shocked because, as I mentioned, people who I knew who had been doing other sorts of drugs for a long period didn't exhibit those qualities. And I thought to myself, I want to be where he's at. But, it was a psychedelic and I was not really kind of afraid of it because I didn't know what the experience would be like. So I didn't try it there. And then I found that the ayahuasca was just kind of pulling me. So when I was in Ecuador, I was in the Amazon and I met another shaman and he was also a ayahuasca shaman, but I didn't do it there either. And then when I was in other countries of South America, like Brazil, it kept like showing up wherever I was going. Then finally, when I returned back to Colombia and I had 1 week left in South America, I had met somebody who was like, hey, man, we're going to be doing this ayahuasca ceremony, and it's going to be a very private ceremony, so very, safe and all of that. So I thought to myself, okay, now I just have to do it because it wasn't just coincidental. And I tried it, and, it really spoke to me. There was a lot of, like, healing that went on in that experience. So, as I mentioned, I had 1 week left in South America, and I returned home. But when I was home, I'm like, I really want more of this. So I went back to South America, and I spent 3 months just finding whichever shamans I could and doing this plant medicine, even to the point of going into the Amazon and working with the shaman one-on-one, doing it every day to every other day.
So that was something that you felt gave you a greater depth and understanding about the various challenges that you were having?
Yeah, I think like your experiences, that's where I learned a lot more about what was going on internally for humans and how we're built and how we're wired. And I had met somebody who had done ayahuasca, and he put it perfectly. He's like, yeah, ayahuasca is like 2 months of therapy. And that's what I felt like because, you would do this medicine and it would really kind of take you inwards. And it could even take you to the exact moment an issue became an issue. You could kind of see the exact moment that an event became the seed to like an anxiety that you had. And what I
Right,
found
and
that was very
in mainstream research and psychiatric in-depth work, many of these psychoactive substances have been used in the past and really even currently are being used therapeutically. And ayahuasca, as well as many psychedelics, LSD, mushrooms, many of them bring people back to that spot. But I do want to have a caveat there because I personally know people, especially more recently with ayahuasca, because it's kind of the herb of the moment, I would say, for the last 10 years. It's not new.
yes,
That many people do it in a more haphazard manner and actually wind up with ongoing psychosis because of the experience. So it's not something to be taken lightly.
No, I agree with that, and I really want to stress that because right now it's kind of become being very mainstream and almost hip. When
Right.
when you go do it in a country like Colombia with a shaman who's been trained since he was young, he's been doing it for 3 years, they have a lot of experience and the environment is controlled. But because of its popularity, there are people who haven't had that level of training and experience who are claiming to be shamans. And they are offering these experiences, not just in South America, but here back in the States. And if you're not careful and if you're not prepared for it, it can not be a good experience. It can actually have a negative effect.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Cam. And we're going to take a little break right here. on The Natural Nurse and Dr. Z. We're going to take a listen to the Natural Medicine Chest. And when we come back, we're going to talk about a lot of the fantastic work that our guest has done. Cam Knight, coach, writer, and author. We'll take a look at his books at mindlily.com. We'll be right back with more right here on The Natural Nurse and Dr. Z.
On this edition of the Natural Medicine Chest, we'll discuss the essential oil taken from the Australian tea tree.
The tea tree, known as Melaleuca alternifolia, grows in only one region of the world, the northeast corner of Australia. It is a full-size tree of the myrtle family, whose oil has powerful abilities to clean and help heal wounds and skin ailments such as cuts, burns, and rashes. In 1770, the infamous Captain Cook was a lieutenant in the British Royal Navy when his ship landed in Australia. The botanist on board, Sir Joseph Banks, collected samples of a sticky aromatic leaf and brought them back to England for further investigation.
In 1923, an Australian curator and chemist, Dr. Penfold, conducted a study on tea tree leaves and discovered that their essential oils are 13 times stronger as an antiseptic bactericide than carbolic acid, considered the standard in the early 1900s. The oil contains 50 to 60% terpenes, 6 to 8% cineol, which causes its camphor-like odor, and several kinds of alcohols. In 1933, the Australian Journal of Pharmacy, the American Journal of the National Medical Association, and the British Medical Journal reported that tea tree oil is a powerful disinfectant, non-poisonous, non-irritating, and has been used successfully in a very wide range of septic conditions. Australian tea tree oil is mentioned in the British Pharmaceutical Codex of 1949, the UK Medicine List, and the Dispensary of the United States.
During World War II, tea tree oil was considered a standard issue item for all first aid kits for Army and Navy units in tropical regions. The demand for tea tree oil exceeded the supply. However, after World War II, synthetic drugs gained in popularity and the use of tea tree oil in medicine waned. In more recent times, a renewed interest in natural, non-toxic alternatives has triggered a resurgence in tea tree oil research. In 1985, Dr. Paul Belachet, chief of the phytotherapy department at the Faculty of Medicine, University of Paris, worked on several double-blind studies involving tea tree oil and its application as a remedy for candidiasis, chronic cystitis, staph and strep infections, and nail bed fungus. He stated, and we quote, "The essential oil of Melaleuca has entered the team of major essential oils and emerges as an antiseptic and antifungal weapon of the first order in phytoaromatherapy."
Try a few drops of tea tree oil in a steam vaporizer and inhale for blocked sinuses, or rub the oil on chest and back for a cough. The Australian Journal of Dentistry reported that using tea tree oil in dental hygiene and in surgery showed it to be an extremely effective antiseptic. Add a drop on your toothbrush or include it as a gargle and mouthwash. Tea tree oil can be applied directly to the skin. Although it's possible that some people may experience a mild allergic reaction, in-depth research has shown tea tree oil to be non-irritating and safe.
So listeners, think about including tea tree oil, the first aid kit in a bottle, in your natural medicine chest.
And welcome back once again to more right here on The Natural Nurse and Dr. Z. And we are talking today with author Cam Knight. That's Cam, K-A-M, Knight, K-N-I-G-H-T. And the best place to find his work is on his website at Mind Lily. Now, you mentioned, Cam, and thank you so much for joining us once again. You mentioned that you traveled elsewhere, and one of the places that you mentioned are ashrams. So I'm wondering if your name, Mind Lily, as your insignia name and the beautiful logo with a brain and a flower, does that have anything to do with your ashram and your traditional experience?
A little bit. When you go out to Asia, you are around a lot of water and a lot of streams and a lot of lakes, and there's a lot of lily flowers out there. And I always found them kind of calming and inviting. And so my company name and website name is called Mind Lily because it represents like a flower blooming. So it's like the mind blooming to becoming more aware, more open, and to the performance also blooming as well.
Well, that's good. I thought it might have had something to do because so often in meditation and in Eastern mystical practices, the lily is an insignia of that. And they often use the lily that way as representing the opening of the mind to higher levels of consciousness.
Yes, and more or less that's what I was trying to get at with that.
But what's interesting to me is if people look at your website, mindlily.com, like I have open right now, and I'm looking at your books, the way you present your books is very different. I would say it's almost opposite to what you might think of as the complexity and etheric nature of Eastern mysticism. And it's like the opposite of that. It's like very Western, very pointed and focused.
It is, and it's interesting that you noticed that because I feel if I did it the way you spoke about it earlier, it would disconnect a lot of people, especially people in the West. So I wanted to bring a lot of insights into the mind, into who we are, our emotions, our unconscious, but in a way that wouldn't turn people off, and in a way where it can have them be more open to what I am talking about. And I thought this was the way to go. And it's been quite effective because I think if I hadn't done it this way, there's a lot of people who wouldn't have been exposed to this kind of knowledge and information.
Yes, I agree with you. And your books are extremely accessible in terms of easy to read and sort of something that hands-on people can take these actions immediately to help them be more organized and focused.
Yes, I am really happy that you said that because the reason I say that is I spent a lot of time trying to make my content accessible. I would say I probably spend 2 to 3 times longer to write my book than another person would, just because I want the information to not only take a lot of time to understand, but be very easy to apply. Because when I first got into this work, especially for myself, I realized that if you have a certain degree of challenge, then you may not even have the challenge to sit through and read a book or even be able to spend the necessary time to take out what it is that you need. And a lot of people who I feel like need the information aren't people who necessarily read books or seek out books for that information. So I wanted it to be really accessible for that type of audience and that type of people who needed that help.
And besides books, you have a course where I guess you work with someone one-on-one as a coach to move them through these various techniques.
Yeah, I do coaching, and I also have a course called Double Your Productivity in 30 Days. And the word productivity could be misleading because a lot of times people associate productivity with making more money or creating more widgets at work. And actually, when I use the word productivity, I mean it to mean just about anything, being able to spend more time with your kids, having more time for hobbies, being able to put effort into a health routine, dieting, exercising, more or less being able to take more action. Because if we can take more action, we can do more things. And if we can do more things, the things that we want, we can create a better life for ourselves, whether that's in health or in other areas. And this book really goes deep into the mind to understand really the blocks to why we can't do things. Because when you look out into the world of personal development, there's a lot of motivational content where they pump you up with a lot of motivation, and there's a lot of content where they're giving you tips and advice and techniques. And all of that is great, but I think there's a piece that's missing. And that piece is that our mind is designed to keep us from growing and moving forward. It's hard to imagine our own mind will stop us from moving forward, but it's true, because anytime a decision, thought, or action is presented, that decision is evaluated by the mind using a whole host of criteria. And if that decision is not in line with the criteria, the mind will prevent action. So it doesn't matter how much motivation you have or how simple the solution is or how beneficial the solution is. If the mind doesn't improve the decision or action, you can't move forward. So I really go deep into why the mind holds us back, why it does, and what we can do to move forward.
Well, let's choose any one of your books. And if somebody was new and just went to mindlily.com books and is wondering which of these great books to choose, and also I want to mention that any one of them, it's so beautifully set up the way you did your website, because you can click on any book and it opens to the table of contents and, some stuff in there that you can actually read. So which do you think, how would someone figure out which the first book would be for them?
I think my proudest work is the book titled Concentration, Maintain Laser Sharp Focus and Attention for Stretches of 5 hours or more. Because like my course, my productivity course, it goes really deep into the mind. And you really get to learn a lot about who you are and why you do what you do, but more importantly, why you can't get yourself to do what it is that you want to do. And I personally believe that concentration is one of the most important skills that anyone can develop. Because if you think about it, without concentration, you really can't do anything else. You can't read a book, you can't listen to a lecture, you can't pay attention to a conversation, and you can't stick with something long enough to see it to the end. In fact, it's useful for making decisions, evaluating options, solving problems, being on time. And concentration is important for relationships, because if you can't pay attention to the people that you're interacting with, those interactions can only go so far. So concentration is a big deal. It's a bigger deal than most people realize, and in fact, it's bigger than even that. It's the most important skill we can develop, and it's a skill that's key. It's a skill that's key to developing other skills. So without concentration, we really can't do anything else. So I would say that would be like the go-to book if people really wanted to get a handle on what's going on with them and how to improve their life.
Well, I really like the way you have it laid out. If someone were to click on concentration, it tells you about the book, and then you also have when you say listen to the intro, is that you reading the intro of the book? I'm not going to click on it because it'll mess up our sound quality here. But what would happen if someone did do that?
Yeah, so all of my books have been narrated into audio. And so unfortunately, it's not me who's narrating it. I hired a professional. It just would have been much easier to go that route. And so they can hear a narration, a small soundbite of the type of content that they would expect.
So then you also have a preview, which is an outline of something that most people could gravitate to or understand about themselves. Like, I love when you say, if you're watching cat videos online and you're going from one to the other and you're really watching it, that's a time when you are concentrating.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, a lot of times people think they have bad concentration or poor concentration, or they don't have the ability to concentrate. But the reality of it is that we're concentrating all the time. All living organisms have the ability to concentrate. Even single-cell organisms have the ability to sense stimuli. And so when you are watching cat videos, you're concentrating. When you're deep in conversation with a friend, you're concentrating. When you are, watching a movie, you're concentrating. So we're concentrating all the time. It's just that we may not be concentrating on what we want. And so really concentration becomes a battle. It becomes a battle between where you want to put your focus and where your unconscious mind or another part of yourself is putting focus.
And you also have, something like that where people can determine, are they having a problem with concentration and what can they do about it? So what are some of the exercises that you would actually suggest that could improve concentration, like you talk about in your book, which is aptly named Concentration?
Yeah. So concentration is, it's not very easy to do. It's like taming a wild animal or sedating a wild beast. And the reason I use that analogy is because our unconscious comes from the wild. It evolved over hundreds of millions of years in the wild. And as a result, when you look at our conscious mind, our thinking mind, the neocortex, that's only been around for a few 100,000 years. So as I had mentioned, concentration is a battle. It is a battle between where you want to put attention and where your unconscious has evolved to put its attention. And I'm just saying that to let people know that, it takes a little bit of work to develop concentration, but one of the most easy and effective ways to improve it, no matter what type of concentration or focus struggle you have, is with self-talk. And the reason for that is because self-talk can actually go inside and rewire your brain to produce to produce better focus. And
that's a very important concept. I want you to say that again. What is self-talk?
Okay. Self-talk is more or less statements that you say or repeat to yourself of the changes that you want to have or have happen in your life. For example, if I was shy and insecure, I would repeat statements like, I am a strong, assertive person. I communicate my needs and wants. Now, on the surface, it may not seem like those words could have much effect, but it's huge. That's because self-talk, when you repeat them, those statements go deep.
Well, give us an example. Like, how would you do self-talk?
So what I would do is I would create a set of 8 to 10 statements around an area that I wanted to improve, and then I would repeat those statements 10 times each every single day. And so when it comes to concentration, I would create a set of, statements and repeat them. So let's say I wanted to improve my focus, I would repeat statements like, I have strong power of concentration. I easily focus on any task or activity I choose. My mind is alert and attentive. I pay attention. It is easy for me to pay attention. I enjoy paying attention. I'm in control of my thoughts, decisions, and actions. I'm free from mental clutter and distractions. I easily and naturally ignore distractions. So there I have like a set of 8 to 10 statements, and I would repeat each of those statements at least 10 times every day. And you'd be surprised, in about 30 to 60 days, you'll just naturally start to become more attentive. The statements that you repeat, they actually go into your unconscious. Start rewiring your mind so they naturally help you exude what the statements that you described.
Well, that's a great example, and we're going to come back to more of our discussion with Cam Knight after we take a break so that you can hear about some of the fantastic shows that are here for you on Progressive Radio Network. And also, you can always donate to the station because we bring the voice of natural information and all the progressive shows that are on right here on PRN.FM, Progressive Radio Network, to more areas of the world than any other progressive network. It's very exciting for myself and my co-host, Dr. Eugene Zamperone, to be on board. Since the beginning, we were one of the first shows along with Gary Null, which of course is the person who started this station. So we're going to let you know about more of that right now, and when we come back, we will continue our discussion with our guest today, Cam Knight, mental performance coach and author. We'll be right back with more right here on The Natural Nurse and Dr. Z.
Hi, everybody. I am Karen Hartglass, the host of It's All About Food. Join me every Tuesday from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. or catch all of my shows in the archives. You can find my archived programs at the Progressive Radio Network website, or you can call my personal archive phone number to hear the most recent 5 episodes of It's All About Food. Here's the number, 1-701-719-0885. Here it is again, 1-701-719-0885. Learn about how we can solve many of the world's problems today and do it deliciously here on It's All About Food.
Are you interested in growing a greener future? Do you enjoy healthy, nutritious food? Would you like to learn how to grow your own organic oasis in an easy and efficient way? I'm Jackie Marie Beyer, the humble host of the Organic Gardener podcast, where I talk with amazing guests who are all using sustainable, earth-friendly practices. I interview backyard gardeners, market farmers, and people who have green businesses related to food. I'd love it if you'd join us on the Progressive Radio Network, coming on Monday evenings at 7 p.m.
Known as a gadget guy, but I love gadgets that really do the trick, like the new app. The Progressive Radio Network has an app thanks to our friends at Audio Now. Hey, this is Mark Farrell, host of Insight on Thursdays at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we broadcast live out of New York City. But if you can't catch the show live, no frets. It's always archived. It's always on the app. Download it now, listen later, whenever you want. The Progressive Radio Network app is available from our friends at Audio Now. Check it out.
And thank you so much for joining us right here on The Natural Nurse and Dr. Z. We love to hear from you, and there's many great ways to get in touch. I would say that the one that was most likely is if you go to naturalnurse.com, because there's a Contact the Natural Nurse, but we also love to hear from you on Facebook. So if you go on Facebook, The Natural Nurse, you can like us, you can get our updates. Very often we send out class announcements, like we have a class announcement right now about our class coming up this weekend called Career Paths in Natural Health. So if you'd like to refocus your career so that what you're making your daily living doing is surrounded by the concepts of natural health, you can do that. Very, very few people who I have consulted with could we not figure out a way that they could either incorporate that as an extra source of income or, in fact, make it their full way of making money. And that includes nurses, any kind of healthcare provider, but also anyone who's doing anything. Are you doing cooking? Are you doing sales? Are you doing advertising? Are you doing transportation? Whatever it is that you are doing, you could actually move that to be associated with natural health, and we teach you how to do it. So thank you so much for joining us today right here on The Natural Nurse and Dr. Z. Our guest today has been Cam Knight, coach, writer, and author of several best-selling books. You can find his books at MindLily, MindLily.com, where you can email him if you'd like to work with him in terms of increasing your own concentration and focus. And let's talk a little bit about memory, Cam, in the time we have left, because I know that that's an important thing. So tell us your concept of memory and memory improvement.
Okay. Well, when it comes to memory, I really focusing on principles, because once you can understand the principles, you understand why the techniques are so important. And once you understand the principles, you're more encouraged to use the techniques. And one of the most important principles I can give people is to not rely on their natural mental processes to remember information. That's because as humans, we forget up to 80% of what we hear, see, and learn within a few hours of hearing, seeing, and learning it. So that's not within the first few months, weeks, or even days, but the first few hours. What's more is that we rely on our memory to remember much more than that. So we will come across a great idea, important instruction, valuable advice, or a painfully obvious fact, and think that it's just too great, important, valuable, and obvious to forget. And sure enough, we'll forget. Then we do it again. We come across an even greater idea, more important instruction, even more valuable advice or painfully obvious fact, and think that this time it's too great, important, valuable, and obvious to forget. And then we forget again. Not only do we forget the thought or idea, but we forget we had one in the first place. We don't realize that we forgot the information. It's simply gone. It's as if we never came across a thought or idea. And what's interesting, Ellen, is that many of us actually live our lives like this, constantly forgetting important and crucial information coming our way. And so much of the advice or solutions that we're seeking, we've likely already come across it plenty of times. We just forgot that we did. And so when you hear the phrase that history repeats itself, note that history repeats itself in our own lives. We're constantly doing the same things over and over again and making the same mistakes over and over again. And it usually comes down to us forgetting it.
So what about that you're talking about a young person and just in general? What about the fact that so many people as they age really do have memory challenges?
Yeah, so as we do age, we tend to think that we are just forgetting more. But I think it's because as we get older, we just have been taking in so much information throughout our lives that, in a sense, our memory just there's too much going on in our head. So I wouldn't think that it's always an age-related thing. It's just that we have just become accustomed to taking in a lot more information. And
okay, well, I have to tell you with that thought, Cam, I want to talk to you about that again in about 30 years. Because I will tell you, using my mind has certainly been my focus my entire life. But I will tell you the same thing that almost everyone who gets to be, 60s and 70s does usually. It is normal to experience something which you never experienced as a younger person, sometimes called a senior moment, where you really see the memory, but you can't grasp it. And that's another whole level that maybe you'll understand more in 30 years. I'll check back with you. So I'm not so sure it does not have to do with age. But I do understand what you're saying is that a lot of people can't grab those memories. They seem to flitter off. So what's a technique that you recommend for having a better memory?
Okay, so a really fantastic technique for that and for other people as well is what's called retrieval. And retrieval involves spending a few minutes deliberately calling to mind material or information that you have read, heard, or watched instead of just rereading, rehearing, or rewatching it. So, for example, after reading a chapter in a book, you close the book and you recall from memory what you had read instead of going back to the book or using your notes. Or after listening to a radio show like this, you think about what the radio show covered and the important points that were made instead of going back and listening to it again. And this is really effective because the real challenge of memory is not with putting information into your brain. This is actually quite easy and natural for the brain to do. The real challenge is in getting it out. And I can give a few examples to illustrate. Have you ever forgotten what someone has said, and the moment they start to repeat themselves, it all surges back? They don't have to finish repeating themselves before you're like, oh yeah, I remember that. Or have you ever read a book that you thought that you hadn't read before, but as you start reading, it becomes familiar? Suddenly you realize you have read the book already. You start remembering all the characters and how the plot's going to unfold. Well, these examples illustrate that memories can be in your head, but seem like they're lost and forgotten. And the reason they seem like they're lost and forgotten is that we haven't practiced getting it out. And retrieval helps us practice getting information out. And the more we practice getting information out, the more we are going to improve memory of that information.
Well, I want to tell you that we're getting to the end of our time together and just throw out a couple of gems and how people can find you.
Okay. Well, I want to, since we have a few seconds left, I just want to give a quick way of how people can do that. So they can do a daily review at the end of the day, where at the end of the day, you try to recall everything that happened in the day. And then the more that they can get into a habit of that, the more that they'll remember the events of their day. And it's a really effective way to really enhance their memory. So I just wanted to throw that out really quickly. But they can find me at, as you had mentioned, mindlily.com. That's mindlily.com. And I've got my books, courses over there. And if they wanted to do some one-on-one coaching for getting over there in our blocks, they can email me at Cam, K-A-M, at mindlily.com.
That sounds great. And thank you so much for being our guest today. Your book is, all your books are, very user-friendly and a great place to start for people to take a hold of how they process information, both in terms of focusing on self-awareness, on personal growth, on improving memory, and the many other topics that you very efficiently and effectively give great steps and how to do. So I want to thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you very much. It was great to be on the show.
And thank you, listeners, for joining us once again right here on the Progressive Radio Network, PRN.FM. You're listening to The Natural Nurse and Dr. Z. So on behalf of myself, Ellen Kamai, the Natural Nurse at naturalnurse.com, and my illustrious partner, Dr. Eugene Zamperone, we're hoping that you stay healthy.